Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Illustration Masterclass. Today we are looking at the artist Kotaki, Kekai Kotaki. Again, terrible with pronouncing names, forgive me. We're going to go through and just look at some of his images, and then I might have a couple of things to say about few of his images. And This guy, he did some work on Guild Wars back in the day. I think Guild Wars 2, which for those who don't know is like a huge fantasy RPG. I don't know if it's like a thing anymore. I don't really get the chance to play games, but I remember coming across his work on the old concept art forums, and I really dug his way of creating art. I loved how loose and fast his stuff was. And, he's doing all this stuff digitally. However, his stuff has a very traditional feel to it. And I think part of that is the kind of sketchy quality of something like this, right? Like you have this very, um, give me one second here. Let me grab my red pen. If I go in here and look, like this sort of thing where he's just got like this random black outline, but then we don't really see it elsewhere in the image. Like you see it sketched here and there. Uh, I love stuff like that because that's not the way it is that people would really draw that if it was a finished piece, right? So his stuff feels very loose. At least this piece feels very loose. And he was really good at drawing these like night type characters. And again, I find that a lot of the stuff it is that as illustrators we should work on is really the way he organizes things. You know, um, the way he organizes his elements, I think is pretty important because you have these different elements of rhythm. You have this rhythm of this that's going up, and then you have this, and you have this that's going up like this, and it's all kind of creating this kind of like, yeah, this kind of motion with the elements, right? And you could look at that and you could say it's circular. I feel like this is an incomplete circle. This arm going here, and then this sword here, and then this going up here. And then of course this diagonal line, it really pushes your eye up here. But I don't know if it's necessarily that it's a circle, but it's just that the hips and the shoulders are not lined up. Like you don't have a figure standing there like this. Like this is boring, right? Because part of that is because the hips and the shoulders they're parallel to one another. So even if you just take one of these and make it like this, then it looks more interesting. And that's pretty much what it is that you have because the hips are facing us, but the shoulders and the body is turning to the side. Let's go ahead and just move on to the next one. Yeah, I'm not always going to have something to say about each one of these. Let me check on my time actually. Yeah, so we're at about 4 minutes. So I'm aiming to keep these around 10 minutes so I can post these on TikTok as well. But I do think that he's got a pretty unique style, even though a lot of different concept artists have taken huge inspiration from this guy, and he's been a huge influence on the industry in general. I still find that his style is pretty unique because of the amount of storytelling that's going on in his images. That's something that I feel like a lot of people that are coming up in concept art aren't taking into consideration, right? We think of something like this and we think, uh, in some sense, you could say that this is, it could be interpreted as a genetic or a generic image, but really there's a lot of storytelling going on here. We have these figures here and we have them arranged in this kind of pattern, which gives them a certain level of hierarchy. And then you have this other sword. So you have this figure here with this sword, and then you have this other sword here with what looks like a shrine or a statue that was torn down. And so there's a storytelling element just within the way it is that these two figures and these figures here contrast against this element, right? There's a sense of loss here, right? There's a sense of loss in general, as if like an older civilization has passed, and these are the ruins of what's left of them. Um, as if like these sculptures have been unfinished or something along those lines. But however, there's also this element here, which adds another storytelling element of like what is it that happened here. Yeah, so I mean the guy is like he's masterful with the color, uh, the color harmonies and things like that. I mean, if we just took them and we just started to, if we took like a white shape here, let's do this. We took a white shape here and we just tried to build a little palette based on what it is that we're seeing here. What's interesting is that he is using a lot of different color in the details of things, right? So you look at the color here and we can see that there's some blue and there's some lime green and there's some orange in here and there's some deeper, darker reds and everything is just kind of melting together and it's creating these nice forms. He's suggesting these nice forms with these colors. And then, of course, we have this element of contrast of, everything over here on this side is kind of falling into shadow, whereas we have this very intense light coming down here. It's very beautiful, masterful work. Again, we'll have to wrap this up here in a minute, but uh, yeah, really, really cool illustration we have going here. I think what makes him so good is that he's not afraid to do things that are out of his comfort zone. If you look at a couple of the images that we looked at a moment ago, you could see how somebody who is a beginner in illustration or concept art could look at how undefined some of the elements in the illustration are and could think, oh, well, you can kind of just hide things in shadows, and so long as you hide things in shadows, then it really doesn't matter. Um, but he really shows in these other illustrations that have a lot of lighting in them that he actually understands what it is that he's drawing. He's not just suggesting things in a very vague way. Some of the times he does when things get lost in the shadows and whatnot. But when you actually look at an illustration that has a full lighting, a bright lighting like this, then you see that he really understands what it is that he's illustrating. He's not hiding his mistakes behind being dark and mysterious. He's drawing the subjects very accurately, right? I really love the color work he does. I mean, and again, something like this, like I feel like a lot of things it is that artists tend to do is we tend to hide things that we're not comfortable with. You know, you see it all the time. Like people won't draw the feet, so they'll just not draw the bottom bottom half of the figure. But you can see that he's really confident in every aspect of drawing, right? Like he's got the feet planted, which is like the boss battle of all boss battles when it comes to drawing something. He's got all these different elements of color. We can do a quick breakdown on some of the different elements of things, and we'll end it here. So, whenever we pull back, again, we want to look at if we look at the background, or we look at the image in general from a distance, there's a lot of different things it is that we notice about this image. For one, nothing is ever equal, right? Like if you imagine that if we took the background there and if we put it like this, and it was just a straight line, just like that, it would not be interesting. It would be pretty boring. Not that the image couldn't still work because the night image is so good, but my point is the amount of thought he put into this and the amount of attention to detail, right? So there is, again, what I've talked about in previous episodes, there is a diagonal. And this diagonal gives us a sense of something dramatic. And this diagonal is echoed in different elements throughout the piece. For one thing, you could say that the cloud space is really only taking part in the top 1/3 of the image. And then you could say this grassy area is taking place in the middle. And then we have this bottom area down here where there's not really a lot going on in a sense, but there is because we have the same echo of these diagonal lines, these converging diagonal lines here, 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 right? So you're starting to see, and then of course in the sword as well, right? So we take this one out, and then of course there's a diagonal this way as well, right? And then you could say this is a diagonal because this is going up, right? So there's a lot of ways in which it is that he's creating this scaffolding for the illustration that automatically makes it feel very organized and it makes it feel very dynamic. But then when we actually look at the illustration itself, I mean, it feels very dynamic, but he's just standing there holding his sword. Like there's not really a lot going on. And you can see that this is again another one of these situations where he hasn't completely finished this illustration. He's got this cat back here, and then we can see the hand isn't completely done either. But it doesn't matter because at this point he's able to suggest so much, and not only that, but also able to suggest so much with the lighting because we have this lighting that's coming this way and it's hitting here, it's hitting here, it's hitting here, it's hitting on the foot, it's hitting this, it's cutting across here. So it's a diagonal that's illuminating in the same sort of direction, but it's coming down, right? So, which also makes sense because if we look at the image from this perspective, we can see that there's more empty space over here than over here, and this is to create a sense of contrast, you could say, a sense of balance, right? Because yeah, it makes it more balanced because there's so much going on this side that it makes sense to have like these long cloud shapes back here. And white as this light is cutting across. All right, all right. I think we got one or two more images. Yeah, just beautiful work. I'm going to include a link to his work in the description box below. Please check it out. If you found this video to be helpful, please leave me a comment. Let me know if there's any artists that you would like for me to look at next. I'm going to continue to do these, and I've got some updates on my own comic book and other projects and stuff I'm working on that's coming up. here pretty soon. And thanks, guys. Take it easy.